Have you ever bitten your tongue and realized silence spoke louder than any word? In a world drowning in noise, could the greatest wisdom be not to speak at all? Notifications buzz, voices shout, we're told to explain, to defend, to prove ourselves. But what if silence isn't emptiness but a secret language, force that doesn't demand attention yet shapes everything it touches? Let's begin where silence once met death. Athens, 399 before Common Era. The courtroom hums with expectation, the weight of the city pressing down. A philosopher stands accused, surrounded by judges, citizens, whispers of outrage, and the looming shadow of death. He could have pleaded, lied, flattered, shaped his words to please the crowd, to bend truth around the edge of survival. He could have preserved his life. But Socrates refused, did not bargain, he did not soften, he did not retreat into the safety of convenience. He spoke truth, fully aware that it would end his days, that each word, each principle upheld, would bring him closer to the poison. The unexamined life is not worth living. Those words were not mere philosophy. They were a sword, a light, and a mirror all at once. And yet, it was not in his words, but in his silence, that his final lesson rang out. Before the cup of hemlock, he stood not in protest, not in fear, but in unwavering presence, calm, measured, a life distilled into its purest integrity. In that stillness, he cast a question across centuries. Is a life without truth, even the smallest, quietest, most personal truth, truly a life at all? Across continents and centuries, in the mist-shrouded mountains of ancient China, Laozi whispered a truth that seemed almost impossible. Those who know do not speak, or those who speak do not know. Not a condemnation of knowledge, but a revelation of its limits. Words, he taught, fracture reality. They chop the world into pieces, cage the infinite into letters and sounds. Speech insists, commands, categorizes, divides. It fights to be heard, but often deafens the listener to the subtle music of life. To name the Tao, the way is all ready to miss it. To explain too much is to distort, to bind the flowing river into rigid channels. Knowledge spoken too loudly becomes domination, a barrier between what is and what is perceived. But silence does not impose, does not fracture. It receives, embraces, aligns. In stillness, the Tao breathes, unfolds, and transforms. It is not absence, it is presence. It is not emptiness, it is the quiet fullness through which the world whispers its secrets. Wittgenstein mapped the architecture of language with surgical precision, carving clarity from the chaos of words. He charted its limits, traced its contours, exposed the invisible rules that govern thought and meaning. Yet at the very edge of reason, where logic falters and language frays, he paused. Whereof one cannot speak, thereof one must be silent. These were not words of surrender, but a gesture of humility, a bow before the vastness that language cannot contain. Some truths, ethical, emotional, spiritual, reside beyond grammar, beyond syntax, beyond the neat confines of logic. They shimmer in silence, unspoken, yet palpable, felt rather than said. Silence is not absence. It is a presence too immense, too subtle, too profound for words to capture. It is the space where meaning breathes freely, where understanding rises not from explanation, but from the quiet recognition of what cannot be contained. Nietzsche, the philosopher of thunder, struck at God's morality, and the very foundations of the world with words that shook the ground beneath thought itself. He proclaimed truths like lightning, blinding, consuming, and illuminating in equal measure. And yet, the last decade of his life was enveloped in absolute silence. Was it madness, retreat, or the quiet culmination of a mind too vast, too relentless, too incandescent for ordinary words to contain? All profound things were the mask of silence. In that silence, there was no absence, no surrender. There was fire. A fire that did not speak, yet transformed everything it touched. His silence was both a warning and a revelation. A voice that does not speak yet burns in memory, echoing questions that words could never fully answer. It was a silence that challenges, that unsettles, that teaches. The deepest truths often live beyond language. And the most powerful proclamations can come without a single sound. Pause. In your life, what does silence do? In arguments, grief, love, or fear, does it protect or hide? Does staying quiet show courage or cowardice? Every silence has weight. It can wound. It can heal. It can be the scream we do not speak or the peace we finally feel. Silence is not absence. It is the language of depth. Socrates chose silence for integrity. Laozi walked into it for harmony. Wittgenstein bowed to it for truth. Nietzsche surrendered to it for transformation. When words fall short, silence begins. And maybe the next time you speak, pause. Ask yourself, is this a moment for words or a moment for silence? Watch the next episode in The Big Questions, where we follow the voices and silences that shaped our world. If this silence spoke to you, let it echo. Comment below. When does silence speak louder in your life?